Alright, my friends, my fellow YouTube movie reviewers, movie review watchers, movie fanatics, it is that time of year for me to do my top 10 best and worst movies of 2013. My god, this year flew by. Maybe the first half didn't because there was like one or two really good movies that came out then. The second half of the year gave us so many freaking good movies, and it was breathtaking. And just to be clear, I did not see every movie that came out this year. I heard that American Hustle, Saving Mr. Banks, The Wolf of Wall Street, I heard all of those were really good, but those are not going to make my list. And another thing, at the end of this list, I'm going to give you honorable mentions to movies that just missed making this list that weren't as good as the ones that are on this list. And everyone, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Number 10.
Coming in at number 10 is the comedy that was above all the others, and that was The World's End. The World's End was really good. It had fantastic acting all the way around, and it's not just the acting. It had action in the comedy, and that's never a bad thing. This was a really great comedy that just had me in tears laughing from beginning to end. The World's End is just the funniest movie that came out this year that made me laugh more than any other movie that came out, so it gets the spot of number 10.
Number 9.
Alright, pulling its way into number 9 is The Wolverine. The Wolverine was a fantastic superhero movie, and I just bought it on DVD, and I got the extended edition, which means it added more blood, more F-bombs, more comedy, more character development, and that just raised the movie even more, and I liked it more that time. This was definitely one of the best Marvel superheroes movies that came out this year. But in terms of a Marvel superhero movie, I still think I liked Thor: The Dark World a little bit more than The Wolverine, which is a spoiler for number 8.
Number 8.
Alright, you already know what it is, so there's no use for an introduction. Number 8 goes to Thor: The Dark World. And Thor: The Dark World was really awesome, and it was hilarious. It kept me entertained throughout the entire thing. What this movie did was it kept my eyes glued to the screen the entire time. It kept me entertained throughout the whole thing. And it felt like it was a lot shorter than it actually was, and that's really not a bad thing because the movie was moving at such a fast pace. It just kept me so entertained that I wanted to see more. I wanted to see more everything, more action, more Portal combat, more Loki. More Loki would be nice, but I gotta wait till the Avengers 2 for that. But oh well, this movie was fantastic.
Number 7.
Alright, coming in at number 7 is another movie with Chris Hemsworth in it, and that was Rush. Yes, a Formula 1 racing movie starring Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl going head-to-head in a competition that you don't know who wants to win. That's amazing, that's great, and I loved it. And when I first saw it, I'm like, that better make my top 10 list. Hey, look at where we are.
Number 6.
Alright, coming in at number 6 is a movie that I rated. I'd buy it on Blu-ray, but I bought it on DVD, watched it again, and I'm like, okay, that definitely deserves to be on my top 10 list, and Prisoners totally delivered. Prisoners was not an easy watch by any means, but I watched it again, and I just admired how freaking amazing the acting in this movie was. It just like, Hugh Jackman needs an Oscar for this. It was so dark and sad the movie was, but I'm not saying I'm never going to watch it again, because I'm probably going to see it again, even though it's not an easy watch. The acting is so incredible and the story is so intriguing, I have to put Prisoners on my top 10 list, and hey, it's at number 6.
Number 5.
Alright, my top 5 already. These are where the heavy hitters are going to come in. And all you art house movie lovers, you're going to hate me for my top 5. Pulling its way into number 5 is Star Trek Into Darkness. Yes, I love J.J. Abrams as a director. He's fantastic. I loved his 2009 Star Trek movie. That was great. And now we have a sequel, Star Trek Into Darkness. That was totally freaking awesome. And Benedict Cumberbatch kills it in this movie. I'm not exaggerating. Benedict Cumberbatch stole this entire movie, and my god, this movie was fantastic.
Number 4.
Alright, number 4 is Power Rangers meets Adults in Pacific Rim. Okay, I, like you, am surprised to see this movie all the way up at number 4 on my list, but my god, I just had so much fun with Pacific Rim. It was such a big scale action movie, and even with that awesome action, it also had really good acting, especially by Idris Elba. He's one of the best actors to date. And really, this movie just got me intrigued from beginning to end, and I did not want this movie to end. Pacific Rim is at number 4.
Number 3.
Alright, these top 3, you know they hit me where I live. Pulling its way into number 3 is 12 Years a Slave. 12 Years a Slave was a fantastic movie with great acting and editing, but really have to be able to rewatch this movie for it to be any higher. I honestly wanted to put this at number 1, but I'm never gonna watch this again. But that does not mean the movie wasn't fantastic. It just means it's really brutal and it's disturbing. But it's still really really good. And so I'm gonna put it at number 3.
Number 2.
Alright, number 2 and number 1, these were both movies where right after I walked out of the theater, I'm like, this one's gonna be my number 1 of the year, no doubt. So I could have flipped them back and forth, but I thought about it long and hard which one I was going to put at number 1, and ever since I've seen that movie, I'm like, there's no way that the other one could be better than this one. Number 2 is Gravity. Gravity had the best special effects I have seen since Avatar. Maybe they were almost better than Avatar. And along with the really good visual effects, the acting was phenomenal, and the story was compelling, and it brought me into it. It made me feel like I was actually there with them in space. Not simply for the visual effects, just what was all happening. You have to see it to know what I'm talking about. Gravity is number 2, and now we're going to my number 1. Okay, my number 1 is a comedy that made sure Adam Sandler came back to his original form, that was Grown Ups 2. Okay, I have to screw with you on this. On number 1 for every freaking top 10 list I'm gonna do, I'm gonna screw with you. But no, Grown Ups 2 is not my number 1. No.
Number 1.
Alright, my number 1. Ever since I left the theater, right after I first saw this movie, I'm like, that is my number 1. I'm fanboying out right now, but my number 1 is The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Oh my god, The Hobbit just totally delivered. And the reason that this movie delivered so well was the fact that the dragon, Smaug the dragon, was one of the greatest enemies to ever be in a movie ever. The visual effects in this movie were great. Everything about this movie was just phenomenal. I mean, the movie brought me back to feel like I was actually watching Lord of the Rings rather than the first Hobbit movie, which is still really good, but this one is better. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug is nothing less than number 1 movie of 2013. Alright, so that's my list, and now it's time for me to give you some honorable mentions. My first honorable mention is Zero Dark 30. Most of y'all were surprised that that one didn't make my list because it did get an awesome-tacular rating, but I went back and rewatched it and rewatched everything else that was on this list, and I'm like, you know what? I'll push you back to the top 20, but it's still really good. Iron Man 3. It's a really good superhero movie with a crappy villain. The villain is the only thing that held it back from getting on this list. Fast and Furious 6. It was a really good action movie, but the movie itself wasn't fantastic. The story wasn't great. It was just really good action, but it deserves the attention because it had the best action. Next to Pacific Rim, it had the best action that came out all year. Man of Steel was another really good superhero movie that I didn't put it on this list because I had pacing issues and action issues, because the action itself looked cool, but there was a little too much of just them flying through buildings. I had a problem with that, but recognition. Elysium was really good, and another movie I had action issues with. I was expecting this really big, awesome cyborg movie, but I got like only about half of it, maybe even less, had action. The rest was, I mean, it wasn't boring. It was still a good story, but I wanted a really fun action movie, and it didn't fully deliver. Kick-Ass 2. That one's another really good one, but the shaky cam and the action scenes just drove me crazy. So I had to leave that one off simply because of that. And Captain Phillips is another one that deserves recognition because Captain Phillips was really good, except it did slow down to a dramatic level in the middle, and that just kept the movie completely from being on this list. But Captain Phillips probably would have been number 11 for my favorite movies of the year. So there are all my honorable mentions, and there's my top 10 list. And thank you for watching, and if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.